Welcome to the Black Male Impact. Today's guest is Mr. Darryl Matthews, and my name is Richard A. Cross, and I'll be hosting the conversation today. And our goal is to inspire positive change. Mr. Matthews, welcome.
Thank you.
Yes, but before we get into the questions, I would like for you to share with the audience, with us, a little bit about yourself, the things that you have done and accomplished, so we can have them, get an understanding of who you are.
Sure. In the course of my professional career, I've had the opportunity and the privilege to work to head up 4 Black national organizations, starting with my college fraternity, Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. I have been the executive director, chief operating officer for the National Association of Black Accountants. I have served as the executive director and chief operating officer for the National Medical Association, which is Black doctors. I've served as the executive director, chief operating officer for the National Association of Black Journalists. And I've also had the pleasure of serving for the newly founded National Society of Black CPAs. Now, in addition to those jobs, I've also served as the outreach officer for the Department of Procurement for the city of Atlanta, Georgia. And I am currently serving as the business development director for Vendorship Inc., a government full-service government contracting organization. And that I just started on July 15th. So
yes, sir.
Those are just a few of the steps that I've had along the way.
Yes, and I really appreciate that. I can see that you have been a person of service, because all your jobs, really, I like that you like giving back. You like to make a contribution to, society on a whole. So with today's questions and focus, which is to have Black males share their insights and how we as Black men can make a difference in our community. So my first question to you is, what is the mindset that it takes to make a positive impact?
So in his book, The Laws of Success, the author Napoleon Hill has a chapter where he talks about the mastermind. The mastermind suggests that before you can do anything, you have to strongly commit to it. You have to believe it. You have to see it. And all too often, we're full of self-doubt. We as a people, we as Black men have faced so many negative charges against us, so much innuendo against us, that if we listen to that, we'll start believing it ourselves. Our kids hear so often as to how they are less than, if they go to college, you must be here on a special program unless you're playing sports. We have to overcome that. And one way we have to overcome it is to just cast out any thoughts, any negative thoughts in your mind. If you listen to, and we're talking about mindset, if you listen to the naysayers, they will tell you that there are more Black men in prison than there are in college. And that is absolutely a falsity. It is a skewed statistic. When you look at the age, college age Black men, you look at the range of college age Black men, there are more Black men now in college than there have been at any time ever before. There are not more Black men of college age in prison than there are in college. If you look at the total number from 8 to 80, yeah, there's too many. There's more than we would like. But we have to stop, and we have to be prepared to fight these skewed statistics and these naysaying, these folks who would have us believe that we're the problem. So it begins with developing that mastermind, that you can mentally overcome any obstacle. And we don't get that often. And I was fortunate that book was purchased for me by a member of my fraternity, a young man at the college level. Now think about it. Here's somebody who's not 20 years older than me. He's at the college level, and he gave that to me as a graduation gift. And when I opened it and began to read it, I realized the treasure that was in there, and I haven't been the same since. And once I went through that book, then there's some others that I had to pick up. But you've got to develop a mindset. You can't listen. There's some people in your own family who will ask you, why do you want to be a doctor? Why do you want to be a lawyer? Who do you think you are? They're part of that negativity we have to overcome. So you have to develop, you have to wake up one day and say to yourself, there's nothing that's going to keep me from accomplishing my goals. I don't care who it is telling me I can't do it, and there will be plenty, and there will be people close to you, haters. And so to make that next step, you have to determine that's the next step that I'm going to take.
Yes, sir. And you bring up a valid point, especially with all the negative labels and stigmas when it comes to Black men. And a lot of times, as you said, we take on those beliefs, and those beliefs then becomes our belief. And a lot, if we don't have those examples around us, we fall prey to those negative statistics, especially, I've heard about, more males in prison, Black males in prison than in college, and which, from research, I realize that's false. So that's a valid point that you have made, and it's really needed to be said over and over, especially for these young men to realize that some of the things that they have heard about themselves or what we're capable of is not true. And, that is really important. And, and I'm glad that you mentioned that. So, of course, you're right. Mindset is really important. So my next question to you, what advice do you have for the men listening on how they can play a role in creating positive change?
So there's two sides to this coin.
Yes.
As a young man, I came from a traditional nuclear family. My mother was a stay-at-home, hardworking mother in the home. My father was in the military. I had two younger siblings, two sisters. So we probably resemble a lot of what you see on television as the nuclear family. But there are a whole lot of Black families that are not dysfunctional. And even those that are, quote, so-called dysfunctional, there's still a lot of love there. But as a young man, I respected my father. I admired my father. But my father had not done in his life what I wanted to do. I took all of the good things from my father. I took him as a point of perspective. I learned about being a man from him, but I knew that I had to walk my own path. So I sought out mentors. I sought out the association with men who were doing the things that I felt I wanted to do or that I needed to learn about. Didn't take anything away from my father. There were additional things that I needed to know. Some of them were very positive. But in order to get those, I had to go to where the treasure was. In other words, I can't sit in my house and expect that somebody's going to just walk up to my house, knock on the door and say, is there a young man here in need of positive reinforcement? I had to go and look for it. There's another book, and the author escapes me, called Acres of Diamonds. And it talks about, it was a rumor that there was a treasure in a particular area in this country. And you had people come from far and wide to look for this treasure. Well, there was a farmer who heard about this treasure, and he decided he was going to leave and go look for this treasure. When he got tired and he didn't find the treasure and he came back home, what he discovered was if he had just turned over the ground, looked under the rocks where he lived, there were acres of diamonds. He was standing on a rich minefield all along, but didn't realize it because he didn't look. We have positive role models. We have people who are willing to help us, but we don't ask. We don't look. The scripture says you have not because you ask not.
That's right.
So I was very fortunate that when I was a college student, I had an afro, and I've got documentation and photos. You can Google me. I had an afro out to here. But I also was fortunate enough to be spotted by some mentors, such as the late, great Brigadier General former Colonel Charles McGee, Brigadier General Charles McGee, former national president of the Tuskegee Airmen, who recently passed. Brother McGee saw me and asked me to accompany him on a trip to meet another gentleman who had said he wanted to meet some up and coming young men, college men. His name was James Williams. He was from Akron, Ohio. At that time, was running for lieutenant governor of the state of Ohio. My point is this: these men could have easily dismissed me as a little young college student who was rough around the edges, who was in need of a little polish. They saw through my hair, they saw through my college facade, and they saw something in me that I didn't see in myself, but they lifted me up anyway. And as I met them, I met others. And so if we're going to make a positive difference, we have to have mentors in our neighborhood, in our village, who are willing to extend themselves. But we have to have young men who are willing to listen, who are willing to go to where the knowledge is. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to follow every word, because these are practicing servants. They're not perfect servants. Yes, you have to make up your own mind, but you need to listen to the wisdom of the elders, because all we want you to do is not make the same mistakes or avoid some of the mistakes, or to get a leg up, a helping hand, so to speak, so that you can get a faster boost. So the positivity comes from being, they always say that you cannot let someone drink from your cup if it's empty. So you've got to develop your skill set, you've got to build your own and be willing to share. And too often, I ran into this coming up as a youngster. I got mine, young buck. You need to go get yours. Well, that's not going to get us where we need to be, especially at times such as these.
Well, that's, you said a lot of valid points where, as young men, yes, we need to go to where they can gain information. But sometimes, from my understanding and from what I've observed, there are young men, they don't know. And because they don't know, they don't take those initiatives. But another point that you have made, as men now, where we're in the positions to see beyond, whatever, how they show up, they may be sagging, they may be, with gold teeth, they may be with tattoos and stuff like that. We have to look past that, see them, who they can be, beyond how they present themselves to us, because that's how we're going to, so that's a valid point. So I hope, the people who are listening, can see, don't judge the young men that you see, go to them and share whatever you can to help them to see themselves beyond their circumstances, because a lot of times that's what they need, that encouragement, someone to believe in them beyond where they are. And so that, that's a valid point. And if we're going to make a difference in our community or in our world, we have to, help the next generation see themselves beyond the stigmas, beyond the labels. So, that's a valid point. And I hope, those who are listening, will realize how important that is to be a role model for the next generation. So
if I could, I'd like to make one more point to that.
Yes.
What has helped me to be a role model, a mentor to the young men that have come behind me, is for me to remember what I was like, what the music was like that I liked. And it drove that generation crazy. It drove my parents crazy. And so now when I listen, apparently the music of the youth is designed to, or is adopted or appreciated because it drives that previous generation crazy. I know we were definitely Parliament Funkadelic fanatics. And before that, there was something else that drove them crazy that they didn't like. And now when I listen to and I hear what young people are listening to now, I have grown sons, but they used to listen to what I call crap or rap. But I listened to it also so I could relate to what they were hearing, because I needed to be able to refute the negative vibes coming out of that. but that was their music. I had to let them develop on their own.
Yes,
Now,
sir.
two of them have kids of their own. And just as is promised, their kids are getting on their nerves. And I get the pleasure of saying, oh no, not in this house.
That's right.
Remember when you were little, you were gonna be a good daddy. You were never gonna spank your kids, never gonna holler at your kids. I was a mean daddy. So now you're not gonna do it in this house. And you can see how frustrated they get. I mean, that's a little bit of a joke in terms, not, I mean, it's serious, but we forget too often from whence we came.
That's
we remember
right.
that.
Yes, sir. That is true. You know, once we get out of the situation, we tend to forget.
Yes.
So, and we can't if we're going to help the next generation to become who they're capable of. So, getting to my next question, how can we as Black men help to change the narrative today?
So, the narrative that I'm going to describe,
yes,
has to do with Dr. Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech. Martin gave us the dream, but we have failed in our collective consciousness to develop the companion strategic plan. He had a dream, but what have we done to develop the plan? We've heard about the dream ad infinitum, but where is the plan? When I talk about the plan, when you develop a strategic plan, it has measurable goals. It has, if you can't measure something, you can't manage it. But what goals am I talking about? How many Black businesses are there? And I'm talking to the audience at large in your community. How many Black banks? We're losing Black banks. We need to have areas where we can develop our own capital, where we have our own capital formation, that we can invest and open our own businesses. I'm not saying that you can't have your account at Truist or Bank of America, but we need to have money in our own community to redevelop, to reinvest in our community. We need to have more positive images in terms of, and we don't have to put this on social media and advise the world what we're doing. Other communities don't do it, but we need to look at what's it going to take to develop our communities. Why do we always end up, why does a dollar flow one time, one way out of our communities? So that's a narrative that we're going to have to change. We have to think outside of what we've heard, been told, or believed. We can do better, and we're going to have to.
Yes.
We're going to have, Black lives matter. They have to matter to Black people too. And I'm not saying anything other than those guns and those bullets that you shoot randomly in our community are only hitting our people. Now, I'm not saying go shoot at other folks just because they're not in our community, but we've got to stop the pathological behaviors, the sociopathic behaviors. And we've got to figure, when those people are shooting guns, they're related to somebody. Somebody in their family knows who they are. We can put a stop to this if we want to. But we're going to have to change the narrative of what we accept. We're going to have to learn to be more healthy, to eat better, and to put money away. Even if it's only $5 a pay period, we need to put something away. We don't understand the value of compound interest, of compound investments. We can't look for get rich quick. The lottery is not a retirement vehicle. Sure, it's fun to play, and I would be lying if I didn't say I played from time to time. But that's not the vehicle for our financial liberation. We have got to think outside of the box. And that sounds like a trite cliche, but we have been so indoctrinated to accept and to just go along that we just believe. Sister Maya said, when we know better, we do better. Yes, I'm not so sure some of us want to know better. I'm not so sure that some of us will ever want to do better, but we can't give up on it. I have spent most of my life not working for big bucks, but working for mission. You heard the names of the organizations I mentioned.
Yes, sir.
Those are not get rich quick organizations. They were mission driven because I was compelled to try to improve the thinking, to improve the strategy of these professional organizations in my community. Those are the only things we have that we built with our own dollars, that we perpetuate with our own dollars, with our own time, our own talent, and our treasury. But even then, we allow them to run dysfunctionally. We don't follow our own rules. We've got to change our mindset. We can't keep blaming. Yes, there are a lot of reasons why we're in the pathological situations we're in. Yes, our government has waged segregation against us, made it legal to not sell us homes where we could build wealth, but we can overcome that. We're going to have to. We're going to have to. We have our own money. We have our own communities. We're building our own homes. And I don't mean buy 100-year-old homes that the other folks used to own. Yes. I'm talking about investing in our infrastructure and demanding, being accountable, have our leaders be accountable to us. There's a lot we have to do and can do, but it starts with not taking what we have as that's the best we can do and that's all we're going to get.
Well, yes, you share a lot of valid points here. And I'm not going to be able to go over all of them because I want to ask you one more question because we're getting close to the end of the time. But, making the change within our community, know that we're not supposed to settle for where we are and realize that we have the resources that we have and we should be able to use it to the best of our ability to grow, to make a difference, to see change within our community, which is important. That we have to be accountable to our own self. And you make one point that is really important. We shouldn't be killing each other. We should be uplifting each other. And if we want to change, we have to start uplifting each other. And that's what this platform is about, uplifting, sharing ways for us to make a difference. But let me ask this question before I ask where the viewers can find more information about you. What impact do you want to have on the world?
I think I've had tremendous impact on the world. I have been responsible for the vice chair. I have lived with the development of the Martin Luther King Memorial since its inception, since it was a wild dream. And I've lived to see that get created. And we just recently celebrated the 10th year anniversary. I have mentored thousands of young men across the world who reach back and thank me for advice that I've given them, that they listened, that I took the time to show that I cared. The impact I want to have, I have 3 sons, I have 3 grandsons and 2 granddaughters. I hope that by my example, that I have lived a life worthy of copying, worthy of emulating.
Yes.
I hope that by this program and others like it, every time I open my mouth, that I prick the consciousness of an individual like a pin to a balloon and cause them to think, cause them to reconsider a decision they were going to make and look at it from all possible angles. But I hope that I inspire others to lift others along with them as they move along, as I have been lifted. Because I didn't get anywhere on my own. I stood on the shoulders of giants. And there are other giants out there. And I hope I inspire other young men to look for giants and climb up on their shoulders. And I hope I inspire giants to lift up other young men to their shoulders. Yes, and I hope that you will say, that man had radical thoughts based on what we're used to hearing. But he made some sense. He caused me to think. I didn't agree with everything he said, but it made me think about things in a different perspective. That's the impact I want to have, that I taught people to think, to be strategic, and to not accept, well, this is the way we've always done it.
Well, yes, and those are really good, man. I know you have a lot to share, and that's one of the reasons why I reach out to you too. I see the work that you're doing. I see the impact that you're making, and I appreciate it. So I know a lot of people appreciate the work that you're doing. So I know the young men that, you have influenced, and your sons and those people who have connected to you really appreciate the work that you're doing and the advice that you share. I know we only have a minute to go. So you can just share where the people can find you, which I'm going to put in the comment area, where they can find you. But if you want to share with them where they can find you and some of the work that you're doing.
So for my message to carry far and wide, I'm on a number of social media platforms, but the one that I take most seriously is LinkedIn.
Okay.
You can find more what I'm doing and not where I'm traveling to, not what I'm eating, but exactly what I'm doing, honors that I've collected along the way. There is a YouTube website where a number of videos, things that I've been involved in or where I'm speaking, that you can find under 30-second GP. And all of this is on my LinkedIn site. So look for me, Darryl Ricardo Matthews Sr. on LinkedIn.
Okay.
All my personal information is there. Just like you reached out to me, I will always respond, and I can be found easily, readily.
All right, Mr. Matthews, thank you very much for sharing such an insight and perspective with us today. And I tell you, I know you have a lot more to share, and I'm really looking forward to part 2 of this conversation so we can continue to make a difference in our community. Thank you.
Pleasure's mine. Thank you.
Thank you.